So it is day 200 of the war in Ukraine. I didn't say special military operation because that's not what it is. It's a war. It's an invasion. Day 200. It's also September 11th, a day of mourning here in the United States. My name is Darren Gertis. I'm going to go over the events of the day and try to kind of paint a picture of what's going on. If you're not familiar with me, I've done this every day for 100 some odd days, and we're going to keep doing this until, well, until we don't need to. Yesterday, I wanted to talk about this, but I didn't because of all the military, what's going on the ground. I didn't want to add this, but it's appropriate to talk about it today. So the CEO of the Turkish drone maker, that is the Bayraktars, that have given drone after Lithuania and then Poland and other places have raised money to give to Ukraine. They're going to set up a factory in Ukraine, which is a pretty significant step forward. And that's kind of a thumb in the eye to Russia. Zelensky asked bloggers yesterday, and I talked about it yesterday, and I'm going to say it again today. Zelensky asked bloggers not to rush with info about results from the defense operation because it's still very fresh. So he did say in this that you can feel free to use what's been publicly announced, okay? But he said, once again, I want to appeal now to some bloggers who are sometimes in a hurry to announce the results. Please don't talk about the actions of the front lines. Please do not report on specific details of the defense operation earlier than official representatives. So I'll stay with official published stuff. Okay, now what they take back. Zelensky talked about taking back 2,000 square miles. I've seen the ISW said 2,500. There was a Ukrainian general that said 3,000, but let's just stick with 2,000 square kilometers rather. That's 772 square miles for those of you who are American to just kind of translate. So that's larger than Los Angeles by some degree. So it's a pretty big chunk. Zelensky, again, here he's saying Ukraine has taken 2,000 square miles of Russian territory. How big is that? So the Russians right now occupy 127, well, okay, as of August 31st, I should say, the Russians occupied 127,000 square kilometers. And so if we just do some quick math, what we find is that 2,000, and it could be more, going into 127 is about 1.5% of the landmass that Russia has held. But they did it in 5 days. I mean, actually 3 days for most of it, and it's probably more than 2,000. So if it's 3,000, let's say, let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, it would be north of 2%, 2.3% if it's actually 3,000, as I've seen some projections. This is what it looks like on the map, and this is pretty incredible. Down here in the lower corner, this is where the Oklavinka, the prison that was blown up at the end of July and blamed as Heimers did it. Sure, they did, to, keep the neo-Nazis from knowing stuff. Okay, so this is the map. This is 9/10. This is yesterday. Look at all the progress from yesterday to today. This is still 9/10, still 9/10, 9/11. Is that not amazing? This is the Russian border right here. So, I mean, they're pushing them all the way back to the Russian border. It is absolutely amazing. Okay, turning to the tide, Ukraine stuns Russia with counteroffensive, but can't claim victory just yet. It's premature to claim victory. Over a 6-day period, Ukrainian forces drove east and southeast away from the city of Kharkiv, plowing through what appears to have been undermanned and poorly defended Russian defenses, making a head-snapping counteroffensive, changing the map of the Donetsk battlefield. And this line I thought was perfect because this is the narrative today. Ukraine may have rewritten the narrative of the entire invasion, and the Russians don't know what to do about it. They don't know how to respond to it or what to say because they've lied about this special military operation being just this little thing, and they can't admit defeat now. So this is a real problem. The Ukrainians now have the initiative in this war, said Mick Ryan, a retired major general in the Australian armed forces. While Ukrainians are optimistic, if not jubilant, from Russia's perspective, it's a split screen. Officially, there's been no public acknowledgement of the Ukrainian successes or the Russian defeats. The Defense Ministry announced that its forces were being pulled out of Izium and nearby Balinkia, and were regrouping elsewhere. They got pushed out. That's actually what happened. Unofficially, there's dismay and fury, especially among the Russian military bloggers and more rabid nationalist commentators. Igor Girkin, I talked about him 2 or 3 days ago, notorious former Russian intelligence officer who played an instrumental role when the war first erupted. He was a colonel, a commander on the ground in 2014, so he knew what he was talking about, and he's very pro-Russian, but he's he was saying, brilliant, operation to transfer the cities of Izium, Balinka, and Kupiansk to our respected Ukrainian partners. Obviously, he's very angry about this. But it's not over yet, so you can't declare victory. You can't do that anytime soon. But they're making tremendous progress. Here's the UK Ministry of Defense. Over the last 24 hours, Ukrainian forces have continued to make significant gains in Kharkiv region, and you just saw it on the map. Russia has likely withdrawn units from the area, but fighting continues around strategically important cities of Kupiansk and Izium. Now, Izium is at a strategic crossroads. Let's go back to this map here. Izium, look at this. I knew something was bad was brewing when I saw because the Russians just came down right through from the Russian border, right down into Izium, took that land, and so it sits at a strategic crossroads. Controlling this crossroads is important, just like they wanted to control what's over here at Sloviansk, because this is kind of a crossroad area, and then move down to Kramatorsk, and so the roads actually determine kind of where they're going to need to go. So okay, let's go keep going here. This is Reuters. The UK dismisses Putin's assertion on Ukraine grain exports to poor countries. I talked about this a little over a week ago. He said, "Oh, the Western Europeans, they lied." This was while he was at the Vladivostok Economic Forum, and he said, "Oh, the West, they lied. They said that they were going to give this grain or sell this grain to poor countries, and it's all gone to Europe." Okay, so. Britain dismissed this as untrue on Sunday. Here, this is the Ministry of Defense again talking about this. Russia is pursuing oh, let me go back up. Putin's claim is not true. We're talking about the grain exported from Ukraine. Putin said that only 60,000 tons of the grain exported had been sent to developing countries, and the majority had been delivered to EU states. Putin's claim is not true. According to UN figures, about 30% had been supplied to low and middle income countries. You would have thought that like one cargo ship had gone there. And they said that Russia is pursuing a deliberate misinformation strategy as it seeks to deflect blame for its food insecurity issues. Okay, so that's what's going on here. That's what this is saying as well. Let's go on to the next thing, which is Zaporizhia, the nuclear power plant. They halted operations. Probably the best thing that can happen. Doesn't mean you can't blow it up and cause havoc by, shelling it or something, but at least it's less likely that bad things are going to happen. Preparations are underway for cooling and transferring to a cold state. Another article about the same thing, because Putin and French President Macron have been going back and forth about, hey, look, you're making this whole area unsafe. You got to do something about that. And the sixth reactor at Zaporizhia was finally disconnected from the grid last week. It's been in island mode, and now it's cooling. So, okay, looks like problem averted. We don't know for sure, but looks like. Okay, finally, experts as part of, not finally, before I get to RT, which is we're always going to, experts as part of a UN fact-finding mission will travel to Donbass finally after 29 July is the date in which this thing happened. And then they blamed US-made HIMARS, Ukraine shelling their own people, the Azov battalion people that surrendered and then were just, blown up. Yeah, so a fact-finding mission to Olavinka is set to deploy in the coming days to look to the incident on 29 July for the death of 53 Ukrainian prisoners. Between 50 and 130 more were injured, and it looks like it was staged. The Institute for the Study of War said that it looks like it was blown up from the inside out rather than the outside missile coming in. And we don't know. I mean, they've done everything. They've had a month to stage it, and they said, "Well, we demand a UN inspection," and then they didn't let them in for a month and a half. So odds are that it's probably not from what they said it was. Speaking of not from what it said it was, let's go to RT, because it's always a good time to see what RT has to say. Ukraine lost thousands of soldiers in counteroffensive, says Moscow. Well, we don't know if that's true or not, but I don't tend to believe RT because they tend to lie. Over 4,000 pro-Kiev troops were killed in southern and eastern Ukraine in a 5-day period. That may or may not be true. I doubt it. If that was true, I would really like to know what the numbers of the Russians killed would be. Now, they were smart enough to say Ukraine military casualties exceeded 12,000, because that 12,000 number is, you take the 4,000 and then you add a multiple of about 3 to 2.5, 3 to talk about total casualties, killed and wounded. That's just a shorthand. More than 4,000 Ukrainian troops killed and another 8,000 injured. Now, that's what they say. I don't know that that's true. I doubt that that's true. But this is the fascinating thing. According to the official, Russian forces conducted precision strikes with missiles and artillery targeting pro-Kiev units in Kharkov region. That's their version of Kharkov, from where the Russian troops retreated earlier as part of what Moscow described as redeployment. No, they ran. They bugged out because they were getting overrun. That's what happened. That's not redeployment. But that's what the Russian Defense Ministry has to claim, because they have no other way of working through this. Okay, this is why it's important. Today in the United States, it's September 11th, and we want to acknowledge and like you see in the picture here, and we're never going to forget this. And the reason that this is important, is you have to understand certain things preceded it, certain things followed it. And the same thing with what's going on in Ukraine right now. There are things that are preceding and things that are going to follow this. If Russia is not stopped here, like Hitler said so much that he would have stopped if he was checked when he had his first invasion. Now, I'm not talking about Poland with the Sudetenland. I did my master's thesis on Hitler, and that's not important right now, but he said that. And so you have to check that aggression, and it's being done right now. But there are people paying unfortunate consequences, just like there were unfortunate victims who had nothing to do with whatever was going on geopolitically here. There are unfortunate victims here. More than 14,000, this is the United Nations today, was it today or yesterday? Yesterday, I think, more than 14,000 casualties to date, but the actual numbers are likely considerably higher. Okay, and they've confirmed this many people killed, that many injured, but certainly it's far more. And so that's why this whole thing's important, and that's why it's important that you're aware of this and you're countering, Russian propaganda talking points, and understanding and being aware, being in prayer, sending support, donating, whatever it is that you're doing. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares enough to actually, I mean, if you're listening to me right now, you've listened to this whole thing, you care enough, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because this is important.